Hey there, everybody. James here, and we are back with another episode of the Satisfied Watch Collector podcast. So today we are on episode 4, and we are going to be talking about aesthetics broadly, and then I want to pivot later into would you buy a watch that looked like an expensive watch, but it was actually a cheap version of it? And I'll share the story about why this is the topic that I want to kind of pivot to later on as we get into this conversation about aesthetics. So if this is your first time stopping by the podcast, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to listen. Please do like the podcast. Share your thoughts with me in the comments. I'm always curious to get your feedback and thoughts around these topics. And also subscribe. I am trying to, continue to build and grow here to bring more value to more people. And so I would really appreciate it if you do subscribe. At this show, we are all about one thing. We are all about getting out of watches what you want to get out of watches. Because I want you to know and love the watches that you have so that you can be a satisfied watch collector. That's what I'm all about. That's my MO. And that's why we talk about some of these topics. We dive deep because I tend to think that I'm kind of a deep thinker with some things. And so I like exploring things in depth and not just talking about the surface level of it, really analyzing, really assessing your thought process, my thought process, and sharing my own ideas on a topic. So again, today we're diving into aesthetics. And when you think about a watch, think about any watch that you've seen, any watch in your collection, and just visualize it for a second. And I want you to think about what are the aspects or elements of that watch that you think of and can kind of picture most vividly. Just take a second and really think about that. Because I think what you're doing in this little short 5-second exercise here is you're actually kind of indicating to yourself what are the things about the aesthetics of a watch that are important to you. So let's just give a rundown because there's a whole lot of them, and we could talk about a lot of these different things individually, but we're going to start just kind of broadly here. So think about a watch and just pause for a second on how many different elements come together to make that watch. So if you start from the center, you've got a cannon pinion. Of course, that's pretty much every watch is going to have one of those. Then you've got hands. Maybe it's just a two-hander. Maybe it's got a second hand as well. Maybe there's sub-registers. There could be multiple. Then you've got the dial. Like what's behind the hands? Is it a color? Is it a texture? Is it a brushed finish? Is it, a mirrored finish dial? Like there's so many different variants of dials, right? Is it more of a matte finish dial? Then you go out a little further and you get to maybe the text on the dial with the brand name and something that describes the brand. Think about Rolex, right? Superlative chronometer or Oyster Perpetual. Just so many different things that it can tell you. Where it's made, right? Swiss made or Japan made. I was going to say Japan made. Japan made. So you've got that text on the dial. Then you keep going outward and you've got the indices, the hour markers. And they have a certain shape. They got a certain polishing, faceting to them maybe. Maybe they have lume, maybe they don't. And then you get out, maybe there's some complications on the dial. Maybe there's a date. Maybe there's other things, again, chronograph registers, whatever it is, a day. And then you're getting out to the outside of the dial, and then you get to the bezel. And then you got the bezel, and you've got these different characteristics of the bezel. Is it polished? Is it brushed? Is it round? Is it multi-sided, octagonal, hexagonal? Like what shape is it? Is there a design built into the bezel? I think about like the Vacheron Constantin Overseas collection, right? They've got this kind of like Maltese cross style going on, even in the bezel. And then you go out from there and you've got the case. Well, what's the case made out of? Is it steel? Is it white gold? Is it yellow gold? Is it gem set? I mean, there's all sorts of things, right? And then you keep going, and then you got the bracelet, and then you got the crown and what that looks like. So all of those things, we haven't even talked about the movement yet, because we could spend a whole another half hour on just the movement. I won't do that. You've got all these things that make up the design or the aesthetics of the watch. And some of those things, just by themselves, are so well known, so iconic, so galvanized in time that you've probably seen some of these videos where they'll take 3 watches. Maybe they'll take a Rolex, an AP, and a Patek, for instance, and they'll put them on a watch roll so you can only just see the bracelet on each watch. And it'll say, identify the watch by the bracelet, or guess which one, or like the 3 most well-known bracelets, or something like that. I've seen those videos all over the place. And just from the makeup of the bracelet, you can tell what the watch is without even seeing a brand, without even seeing a dial, any of the other design elements. So just think about how powerful that is, how powerful it is to influence you in a way that you know a watch just by looking at its bracelet. I was talking about this with a friend of mine the other day. But that's just a couple of the elements of aesthetics. And so where I'm going with the conversation today is thinking about your collection, or if you're new to collecting, thinking about things that you've maybe been looking at, and thinking about what of those design elements stand out the most to you. I think for me, it probably would be, it's probably a combination of the dial and the shape and the look of the modernity and the cleanliness of the dial. And if you've seen some of my reviews and some of my, I posted a state of the collection video kind of at the end of the year, last year in 2025, and showcased my collection as it stands today. And I do think that there are definitely elements of, I love clean looking dials. I like modern looking stuff. I'm not a vintage guy. I never have been. I don't know that I ever will be. But I like clean looking dials, I like modern dials. Obviously, I'm very big into blue. And I like the various elements of technology that go into dials, right? Whether that's more of like a modern tech kind of thing, as you get out from the dial, I always think of the Rolex Sky Dweller. You have the ring command bezel that kind of outlines the dial. So I just always find that interesting. To my Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Ultra Thin Perpetual enamel that is not technology in the sense of something new, but it's craft that's super, super old. Like hand-made guilloche on a dial base has been around for many, many years in watchmaking. But just because they take that and then they blend it with a Kurt Klaus perpetual calendar mechanism, it's just really fun. It's a really fun blend of this old school heritage and craft mixed with this modern complication, and then of course enamel and all the things that go along with it. So just thinking about some of those things. What are the things in your collection, or again, if you're looking at watches, what are the things that you find that stand out to you? Because I do think there's value in knowing those things, because it makes you able to articulate what they actually are, versus just being able to say, well, I like this watch, or I just don't like it. Or, this one speaks to me and this one doesn't. And I'm very fascinated by the concept of why does it speak to you? Because there are reasons why it speaks to you. And the way that you approach your collection in watches is probably similar to the way that you approach some other things in your life. And I just always find that interesting. Again, I've talked about some of the ones for me of just there's an element of precision, even the shape of hands or indices, and the perfect faceting of those things. There's just that element of precision there. And I'm a very big process person. That's just something that I have been for a long time. And that's just going to continue to be who I am. That's just part of who I am. And that's developed over time, of course. And so that may be different for you. And that's the beauty of watch collecting is that everyone has different ways that they approach what beauty means to them when they think about a piece of art, when they think about something on the wrist, the size, the case material, all those things, the design elements. And some of those things we share, some of those things we don't share, but we all have our own reasons for liking them. So I just kind of wanted to take you through that tour of when I think of aesthetics for a watch and design of a watch and what appeals to me, just how much we very often just look at a picture of the watch and then it's like, yeah, I like that design, or I'm not a fan of that design. But when you dig into the actual elements, there are probably things that you may actually like on a certain watch, but you just don't love the overall design. I think about Moser. Moser is a really interesting brand. And the dials that they make are incredible with all the fume fades and like some of the colors even, right? Like funky blue or like cosmic green, I think. So just some really cool stuff. And honestly, I understand what they're doing. So they actually are moving now, I think for most of their watches, to either not having a brand name on the dial at all or having a very lightly inscribed brand on the dial. And so I understand what they're doing because in reality, it's the same conversation about the bracelet, right? It's like you're recognizing the watch without even seeing what the brand is. And there's power in that. So I appreciate that that's the direction that they're going. But personally, for me, I like having the brand on the dial. I like that there. Like it's an identifier. And, it's not like I'm going to forget what brand something is in my collection, right? But it's just like there's an element to me of being able to create a brand, create a logo that is aesthetically pleasing and is beautiful and is simple and symmetrical and adds harmony to the dial rather than adding maybe complexity or busyness to the dial. So those are some thoughts around the branding part of aesthetics. And where I'm going today with this conversation is to something that happened to me recently that I wanted to share, which was I was contacted by a company called Geya Watches. It's Geya. And they had seen some of my content, and they reached out. And this had never happened to me before. So I'm kind of getting into the space of creating content. I've been around watches for quite a few years, but making content is something that's newer for me. So they reached out to me, and they basically said, hey, we like what you're doing. We've been watching your content. We would love to send you a watch to review. And the second that I read it and saw what they were, I was like so close to the idea, so close to it. Because again, I am interested in luxury watches. I'm starting to get a little bit more into maybe some of those budget value type of watches. Again, I've been looking at Citizen a little bit recently, just because they have some really cool technology and materials and things that they're putting into some of their pieces. But for the most part, it's my watches are anywhere from $5, to upwards of $40-ish, $1,000, right? So that's kind of the range within my collection. And that for me is just okay, that's where I can stretch to based on my income level, all those things. That's just what is doable for me. And so when you think about something that's just way outside of your range, the question is, what do you do with that? Right? I talked about the Royal Oak. I think I mentioned that early in the episode. And personally, AP is not my cup of tea. Now, there's people who, of course, will hate me for saying that or be like, well, how can you not love AP? It's one of the iconic brands out there, Holy Trinity, yada, yada. I get it. I don't disrespect AP. It's just design-wise, going back to what we were starting with, talking about aesthetics, is not, I don't like it. It's a little bit boxy for me. The all-integrated look, the way that they do it, and the case shape, I think more so, the case shape and the bracelet are just not as much my jam. If you took a Royal Oak and took the dial and put it onto I guess I'm kind of getting to essentially a code 1159 is kind of where I'm getting, because I actually do really like the code models. I think they're actually quite beautiful and underrated. So you can tell now where I stand with AP. But I do think that, again, certain aspects of the design just don't do it for me with AP. So when you think about those types of watches, and I was thinking, we'll kind of make this a little more of a explorative episode here, because I want to look at some stuff while we're talking here, because I think it'll be relevant. So I'm looking at Chrono 24, and I searched just Royal Oak Jumbo, because I've never really looked at these to like think about buying them, because I don't really like them. And so as far as pricing, when if I was thinking to myself before I made this episode, how much does it actually cost to buy a Royal Oak Jumbo these days? And I had no idea. I really don't even know. And I was like, I know it's expensive. That's about it. So, Royal Oak Jumbo, I'm seeing prices anywhere from, obviously there's a lot of different models with AP. It's one of those specific model lines that is just like, there's a ton of them. Anywhere from like 60K, depending on which model you get, up to maybe 120, 125. There's some specialty versions of it that are, even more than that. Obviously, when you get into the open worked, like skeleton dials and stuff, you're getting even more than that. But let's just say $65,000 as like a rough average number of what it would cost to buy a Royal Oak today. And that's pre-owned. Again, if you can get it from an AD, well, I mean, more power to you if you can do that. I've heard that they are very scarce right now. I'm sure there are obviously still collectors and people getting them, but I've heard from some collectors that they have very little in their boutiques right now, which is really interesting. So here's the question, and here's where I'm going to spend the rest of the time. And you may hate this topic, and if you hate the topic, I'm sorry, but it was relevant. So again, this company sent me this inquiry. They were like, we'll send you a watch. And I decided to do it. I decided to do it because of the fact that it raised this question of, where do you draw the line? When you like a watch, like let's say I fell in love with an AP Jumbo. I wouldn't. But let's just say I fell in love with a Royal Oak Jumbo. And I know, I mean, if I wanted to actually buy one of those watches, let's just say again for like 65 grand, I mean, it would probably take me, I don't know, 15 years like to really do it and save for it and do it, like, 10, 15, like sure, if I was like only doing that, it would probably take me less time, but that's not. I mean, we need to live our lives in between buying watches. I've talked about this before. The budget is the first thing that you've got to consider anytime you're looking at a watch, because if it's way out of your price range and it's going to take you 30 years to get there, I mean, some people may want to do that. I don't know. I feel like I'm impatient at times when it comes to watches. And so I always like to shoot for things that are, again, luxury, that I like, that are still within my reach, that are going to take some journey to get there, but it's not going to take me the rest of my life to get a watch, basically. And so I agreed to do this review, and I posted it this week on my channel because it was kind of fun and kind of interesting. And actually, when I saw the watch, I liked it more than I thought I would. So the watch that I reviewed was essentially a copy of the Jacob & Co. Casino Tourbillon watch with just it's got the center of the dial is essentially baguette cut diamonds, and then the hour markers are different colored diamonds, and then outside of that you have a roulette wheel that has a slider that activates the roulette spinning function, which I think is really cool. So that's the watch that I reviewed, and I was just, honestly, I was kind of dreading it a little bit after I agreed to do it, because I was kind of thinking, I'm like, man, I mean, people on this channel, they come here because I talk about luxury watches, and I think it's going to turn a lot of people off. And that may be the case. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'll lose some subscribers or something when I, once I've posted it here. But it the reason I did it, again, was because it raised a really interesting question. Would I be willing to buy a $400 version of a watch that looked exactly the same as a Royal Oak Jumbo, knowing that, again, to pay 65 grand for it would take me several decades? It's a great question. It's a great question. Or would I just allow it to be kind of one of those unobtainable grail pieces that is how some people define a grail, which is like, it's the piece that I always will want, but will never actually be able to get. So like, that's my grail because it's always going to be the chase without ever actually getting the watch. And I just reject that notion of grails. I've talked about this before, because we only get to live life once. You only get to do this once, y'all. And so when I think about going after things in life, if it's something that you're going after that you will never actually achieve, to me it does become a little bit pointless. And I don't mean that as like an ideal, because I think there are ideals that you can hold dear and that are kind of your North Star for how you navigate your life, that you're not like, it's an ideal. It's not something that you do actually like physically have. It's not like, the watch, right? It's not like you'll never physically have the watch, but as an ideal, it may be something that you can continually work on as a human being, like health and wellness, or, building your nest egg and your wealth and those sorts of things, refining your skills for your career, building your skills in relationships and being a better husband, wife, spouse, like those types of things. Those are ideals and principles that you can continually refine, but it's not that they're unachievable. It's just that it's going to take time, and you can kind of spiral up, if you will, where you get something as well as you can get it, and then you work on it for a while and you kind of chew on the idea and you think about it, and then you come back to it a year later and you're better at it than you were before, or you understand it more than you did before. That type of thing is going to be something you can do for the rest of your life, and that's fine. But when it comes to achievements, like, it would be, to me, the example that I'm using with the Royal Oak here would be like yearning after a job that you would never get, or yearning after a business that you would never actually either start or succeed in. It would be like, wanting to be a professional athlete all your entire life, knowing that you would never actually be a professional athlete. So to me, it kind of has that same thought process. So that's why I agreed to review this watch. And like I say, I did actually enjoy it. It was fun. The watch was huge. The video is posted, but it was like 46 millimeter case, 17 and a half millimeters thick, like a 52 and a half millimeter lug to lug roughly, which is just huge, especially for my little tiny wrists. So massive, 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 but very cool. And it definitely is a substitute for buying a $300,000 Jacob & Co. Casino Tourbillon watch. So that's kind of where I am going to stick for a bit, because I think it's an interesting question. And I think that there's a lot to talk about even within that conversation. And there's a lot of them out there. The Jacob & Co., I just use that as the example, or the AP, because there are actually two watches that this brand did have. So obviously, like I say, I got the Jacob & Co. to review. They did have a copy of the Royal Oak. They had a Nautilus, of course. They had a few others that were really well known. And it just brings up that question of, what's the point when you would stop and you would just kind of give it up and say, I'm never going to have this watch. So rather than never having it in any form, I'm just going to own something that looks like it because it'll be fun to wear. And I appreciate the aesthetics of it that much that I just want to be able to wear something that looks like it. I know it's not the real thing, but it's just going to be fun for me to wear. Now, I wanted to think about this from a little bit of a abstract perspective. I have to tell you, from my perspective, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Again, I reviewed this watch. I have no desire to own a Jacob & Co. really, that's never been something that's been on my list. It really was just something that I was doing for fun. So I wouldn't, for me, it's not something that I would do. And again, to me, the point of buying a watch has to do with the quality of everything that goes into it, and also the level of work, effort, focus, achievement that it takes to be able to get that watch. So sometimes I might have ties to the brand. Sometimes it's aesthetically pleasing, something you find harmonious, beautiful, something that I'll know will be consistent and reliable for the duration of my life, really, for the price that I paid for it. And to further the collection, again, this is a little bit of a disease. I've heard Kevin O'Leary say that, and I do agree with him in that regard. Because once you get the bug, it's tough. It's tough. And that's why I've spent so much time focusing on how do I be satisfied with the collection and the watches and the pieces that I have, and how do I just continue to learn about those, because I don't want to always be playing that game, because you can always play that game. You could be playing that game till doomsday, literally till the day you die. And you may still always find a next watch or a different watch or a better watch that you want. And so that's why it brings up that interesting conversation of where do you draw the line? It's going to be dependent on budget, for sure. Like, what's realistic for you? For some people, they're going to work a long time to get a Seamaster Pro from Omega. And that's a fantastic watch. It'll last you a lifetime. You can pass that thing on. And man, Omega movements are generally really accurate. I've been kind of paying attention to my Ploprof since I've had it. And it seems like it's probably a little bit on the slow side, like it's losing a little bit of time, but not a lot. So that and my Grand Seiko are by far my most accurate pieces in the collection. So it's relative. It's relative based on your price point. And there are people, obviously, that buy the Jacob & Co.'s of the world, the 5711 Pateks of the world. Not like retail, but, now that they're out and crazy in price. So there are people that can afford that stuff, and they do buy them. And who knows? I mean, maybe for those folks, there's like a next level of what I'm talking about. That's like a yacht or something crazy like that, or a jet, I don't know. But that's why I do think it's relative. But it is a personal preference. It is a personal preference. And that's why I also, like I say, I wanted to start the conversation by saying it's not for me. I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to do it. But that doesn't mean that it's not a valid idea. And again, maybe this sounds like blasphemy to some people that are listening because, of course, this is a luxury watch podcast. And it's like, James, why are you advocating that people buy $200 and $300 watches? I'm not. I'm not. But that's where there's room for individual expression. And it can be fun either way. You can still have the hunt either way. And I do know collectors that are that way. They've, have spent their time in the typical brands that you think of when you think of luxury watches. Rolex, Omega, JLC, Girard-Perregaux, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, all those brands, right? And then they stumble across something that is way less expensive, but still has some cool functions or features to it. Or that looks like something else that's really expensive, and they do it in a very tasteful way. And I think that can be valuable for some people. And it's valuable for a lot of collectors who collect luxury stuff. I still think that a lot of people have Seikos or Casio G-Shocks that they wear as their daily watches. And then they'll have a $10,000 or $30,000 watch, and they wear all of them. They give them all wrist time. And it's pretty cool. And that, again, to me is the beauty of the hobby. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of these. And not from the same brand. I'm just curious because it's more of a curiosity to me. So this is just a little bit more on the research side of things. I haven't done this yet, but I thought it would be interesting to do something different. So Royal Oak Jumbo, again, the kind of a typical Royal Oak Jumbo model. There's a whole lot of them. I realize that. So again, you can look at different price points and things. But probably somewhere around 65,000. Let's just average that out. And you can go way more if you start to get into the anniversary editions, offshores, all those things. 65 plus, easily, for a Royal Oak Jumbo. Now, I haven't looked at these in a minute, so I'm going to look up just Patek Philippe Nautilus. This is another one that I'm like, no idea. I haven't looked at it other than seeing people talk about it. No idea. So let's see here. So 5711, 112,000, 125,000. So it seems like maybe they've leveled off a little bit for just a standard 5711. And then, of course, you get into all your complications. So, 5712 is like 120,000. 5980 up there also. The new stuff, yikes, like the new 2024 white gold chrono is like 180. So, these are even more. I still remember when the 5711 was first discontinued and they were selling for like hundreds of thousands, if not more than that. And then, of course, you've got all the Tiffany branded stuff that's like 300 plus just because it says Tiffany on the dial. Really, really interesting phenomenon there. So, that's another great example, right? Just something as simple as that. Aesthetics. Going back to aesthetics, the theme of the episode. Having a name brand on the dial, along with another name brand, mind you, makes it worth like 3x. Just think about that. Think about the power of the branding that exists with Tiffany & Co. that it can make a watch be worth that. And I have no love or hate for this either way, by the way. So I'm not one of these people that says, it shouldn't be that way. No, I think it absolutely should. And it's just really interesting, candidly, because that's part of the value equation for some people. Because again, people buy these things for their own reasons, and that is unique to each collector. If you're a young guy and it's, I want to attract girls and I think that they'll like me more if I have a cool watch on, that's a value proposition. Whether or not it's true, that's a value proposition for some people. And if you're more on the conservative side, right, where you like to be a little more like I like to be subtle with my stuff. I just do. That's kind of my sense of style. I'm not a flashy guy. Yes, I like nice things, but the sense of style for me is it's more about subtlety and being tasteful with it than being flashy. And there are people who do flashy very well, by the way. Like I've seen some guys that like they dress up and they doll it all up, and they've got like diamond set watches and rings and necklaces or whatever, and it's actually looks really good. I think some people can do that. I don't think I could ever do that, but some people can, and it's tasteful, even though to me it seems flashy. So that's the value equation in something like this. So again, that's Patek. You're looking in that probably a little over 100 realm. Obviously, if you go vintage, like if you go older, you can find other stuff. Let me just see, 5711 if I go here. Price low to high. Yeah, so it's not your full bracelet models for sure. Probably some older models. White dial, of course, is going to be a little bit on the bottom end of this conversation. The other weird part to me when you start to get into some of these is that the precious metal variants of it are actually worth less. Like, figure that one out, so like the yellow gold versions of these watches in some cases are actually worth less than the steel. So that's always just wild to me, but that's a real thing that's out there. Okay, let me see. I'm going to do one more, which I'm a little more familiar with, but I just want to look at the classic Rolex Daytona here. Ceramic bezel. Let's see. So let's see, 35-ish for a white dial, for a Panda dial. Black is down, but still high at 27, 28. And it looks like these have box and papers, I think. Let's go box and papers only. Yeah, 27, 28 for Rolex Daytona. Okay. All right. So I just picked 4 watches, you know, just some well-known ones, just because people know them. Now, I'm curious. So now the watch that I reviewed, this Geya casino, or not casino, sorry, the roulette concept roulette. Retail price on it. Let me just find it. I had it up here. Where did it go? Geya watches casino roulette. Why can I not find it? There it is. Okay. So this watch that I reviewed, I think it was $359 was the retail price for it. And I think they had it on sale, which again is just wild. You know, it's like we're in the watch space. We're not used to having things on sale, but you know, these kinds of things, of course, they can. So yeah, on sale. Was it 2? I don't know why it's being slow right now, but yeah, it's like 2 something that it's on sale for. Normally like $360. So there's that. So let's go to the next one just for fun. Again, so Royal Oak Jumbo. Let's just see what these go for. I'm just curious. And I don't know. I don't know enough to even like look for them because I don't know like how to find them or whatever. Okay, so they've got, I'm looking at, this is superluxuryreps.com. And these are probably a little bit higher quality, I would assume, than some of the ones that I saw. These are like $1,200. And they look the part. You know, they look the part. Textured, all that stuff with the the ground tapisserie dial. So, yeah, obviously not 10 hours of hand finishing on that for $1,300, but it looks visually very much like the watch. Now I know there are like experts on this who they could put them side by side and they'd be able to tell you the real one. I am not that because I have not looked at enough of these to figure that out, but I know that there's ways to do that. So there's some context. So anywhere from like maybe $200, $300, $400 up to like $1,300, and I would assume that there's probably several in between that price point. So just just for what it is. So let's see. Let's do one more. I won't beat this to death, but I'm just curious. So let's check out the Patek. Okay, so this one, yeah, look at this, $1,200 to $1,600 for a 5711. Same website actually, so this looks like they make a bunch of these. So these are probably a little bit higher quality. Looks like they even try to finish the movement to make it look similar, so I would assume this is a more believable version of what this looks like. So that is my pondering question for you, and I do think it's an interesting one. Because again, we're in the luxury space. We like nice things. So my question is, would you be willing to pay for something cheap that looks exactly like something that's really expensive? I think we do this more with artwork. You know, like if you're going to order like a Van Gogh or a Monet or something like that. You know, because people make canvas replicas of those paintings and that type of artwork for very, very cheap that you can get and put it in a house, and it still is like tasteful and nice, right? So to me, it's kind of the same concept. It's kind of the same concept. And my question to you is, would you do it? If not, why? I've shared with you some of my reasons. If so, I think have fun with it. Because I think there's a lot of fun stuff that you get into. Like if you kind of got into that wheelhouse and you started buying some of those things, you could have fun with them a lot, you know. And when you're doing it for fun and it's not serious collecting, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And that's my take on it. So that's why I wanted to talk about aesthetics today. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you stopping by the channel. Again, please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. Comment down below. I want to hear your answer to this question. I gave you mine. The answer is no. I wouldn't do it. It takes away from what acquiring the watch represents and all the work that goes into acquiring the watch. So I would not do it. But I am curious if you would, and if you would, why? If you wouldn't, why not? So thanks again for stopping by. My name is James, and my goal is that you get out of watches whatever it is that you want to get out of watches so that you can know and love the watches that you have and be a satisfied collector. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.